Good morning, everyone. I think we're going to get started. We have a really exciting day ahead of us. And one of the things that this beautiful day has brought to us is this blanket of snow. Unfortunately, with that beautiful blanket, though, some people are arriving a little bit late, including our elder. So to get things started, and we will call upon our elder later on when she arrives, but I would like to open up this event yet with a prayer. I think it's very important. So I'd like to say a few words, and thanks to the Creator. Miigwech Gejemnado de Benjige. Jidabin Dishna Kaz, Jijak Dodem, Wigwaskinaga, Ina Yadom the Sing Donjaba. Miigwech the Kit Nomgom Gijgat. Miigwech Geish Gakamekwe, Gimijiang Mijim, Gimijiang Mina Shkeke. O Great Spirit, thank you for this beautiful day and for the beautiful people here in this room. We thank you for everything that creation has given us. We thank you for the beautiful lands, the beautiful water, the medicines that grow naturally across this beautiful territory. We thank you for the blessings of the safe arrival of these people here today, and we ask that you look after their family and their friends, the people that they work with back home at their home fires. We ask you for your intervention in helping us to come up with good thoughts, good solutions to help with the reconciliation of our people and to engage all of Canada in our discussions as we go forward and also in the thinking and the thoughts going forward. We thank you, Gejemnado, Creator. Miigwech, 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 Miigwech. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Madabi Leach, and I'm the interim chair of the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board. For those who may not know, the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board was established in 1990 as a Governor and Council appointed board mandated to provide strategic policy advice to the federal government, to the whole of the federal government, I should say, on issues related to Indigenous economic development. Comprised of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit business and community leaders from across Canada, the board helps the governments to respond to the unique needs and circumstances of Indigenous peoples in Canada. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this conference. Expanding the Circle, what reconciliation and inclusive economic growth can mean for First Nations and Canada. This is the first time that our board has held a conference of this magnitude, and we're thrilled to be able to engage with you on this topic at the moment when reconciliation and inclusive growth are major priorities for the federal government. The board is thrilled to partner with the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association and the Public Policy Forum to bring you this event. This is the first of 3 events we'll be doing together on the same theme. Today's focus is on First Nations, but we will host a conference on reconciliation and inclusive growth for Métis and Inuit people in June and September, respectively. We're excited to have a great lineup of speakers here to talk about the importance of Indigenous economic development in the context of reconciliation and how inclusive growth can be a tremendous benefit to all of Canada. About a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to go to Australia and hear firsthand of the work being done by Reconciliation Australia. Today we have Karen Mundine from Reconciliation Australia here to talk to us about some of the experiences, their experiences. But before she speaks, I want to tell you about the report that we recently released that was inspired by a similar study done in the Australian context. The report we released this past fall showed that if all opportunities were equal and the Indigenous labor force was mobilized, it could lead to a $27.7 billion annual contribution to the Canadian GDP. And let me tell you how. Canada faces a looming demographic challenge. The population is aging. As boomers retire, the shrinking workforce will result in increased healthcare costs, higher taxes on fewer working people, and loss of productivity. In order to maintain our standard of living, Canada must focus on increasing labor productivity, and it must recognize that immigration alone cannot make up the shortfall. To maintain levels of productivity, Canada must invest heavily today in human capital to ensure an adequate future supply of skilled labor. Where can we find plenty of homegrown human capital? Well, in contrast to the general population, the Indigenous population is young and growing fast. In 2011, 46% of the Indigenous population was under the age of 25. This represents a wealth of labor potential that is currently underused. And we've been saying this for nearly 2 decades now. But investing in our youth needs to be more focused through a real concerted effort. I just want to say we've been talking about this, our youth, at conferences and everything for 20 years, but we still haven't really mobilized this potential. That's almost a lost generation already. 20 years we've known this. But so to capitalize on this waiting Indigenous labor force, we need to close the gap in income and prosperity that exists between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians. There are so many barriers to Indigenous economic participation. These, of course, include shortage of jobs, lack of education and equitable funding for education, lack of training, work experience, remoteness, lack of transportation, lack of digital infrastructure, not knowing where and how to look for work, a shortage of employers willing to hire Indigenous youth employees. We can begin to address these barriers by improving education and training at the kindergarten to grade 12 levels, the post-secondary level, and by creating Indigenous job training programs. And of course, we know we have those kinds of things. But there needs to be more of a connect across the country in doing this. We can begin to address these barriers by ensuring that Indigenous people have the same access to economic opportunities as other Canadians, including access to new jobs, equal conditions of employment, and access to capital so that Indigenous people can start their own businesses. And we can make real progress in closing the gaps by solving the problems of clean drinking water, the basics, access to health and mental health care, proper housing and community infrastructure, internet connectivity in remote communities. You know, we talk about there's so many infrastructure programs out there, but they really need to be targeted to addressing those needs in one of the Canada being one of the most prosperous countries in the world, and we still have these issues. We need to really concentrate on that. Our report revealed that closing these gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous productivity would not only lead to a 27.7 billion increase in the GDP annually. But it would also lift over 100,000 people out of poverty and save Canadians $2.2 billion annually in poverty costs. Advancing the socioeconomic well-being of Canada's Indigenous peoples, reducing poverty, and getting people participating in the economy is why we're all here today. And that's why I'm so thrilled that so many of you have come to engage in these discussions with us. I just wanted to summarize by letting you know that as a result of today, we'll be taking this information. I'll speak more about it later, but I know that our board is hungry for your advice. Our national board is hungry for the advice that you can provide us on some real ideas on achieving economic reconciliation here in Canada. And I just wanted to quickly introduce some of the board members that are here today. I know weather's a factor and other issues, but I see maybe you could stand Marie Delorme. There we have Ruth Williams, Hilda Lepet-Tempier, Sharon Henry, Stinson Henry, sorry. Do we have any other board members here right now? I don't see them, but a small but mighty group. I want to thank you all for being here, and I'll tell you, we're so thrilled to be here and to hear what your ideas. So I won't say more for now, but I will invite my co-host, Andrew Leach, no relation. He's from the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association, and I would like him to offer his welcome as well. Miigwech.
I'm not Andrew. My name's Kim Baird, and I'm your Master of Ceremonies for today. I'm on the board of the Public Policy Forum, and really want to thank Dawn for getting us started in a good way. And when our elder arrives, we will ask her to address us as well and give us her blessings. I really want to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather as the traditional unceded territory is the Algonquin. And as I said, my name is Kim Baird. I'm the former chief of the Tsawwassen First Nation from the West Coast, so my time zone is a little bit off at the moment, I have to admit. And I'm a board member with the Public Policy Forum. So before I call Andrew up, I just want to make a couple of opening remarks to thank everyone for coming today. We're digging into an incredibly important topic, reconciliation and inclusive economic growth, and what that means for First Nations and for Canada. We're live streaming this conference on the Public Policy Forum's Facebook page, and I encourage you to tweet about it as well. The hashtag is Expand2017, and people on Facebook watching can submit questions through the comments section of the page. So I'll just take one more minute to give a bit of background about my interest in this topic, and to say that while I was chief, I spent most of my career looking at reconciliation, and for my community, it was the path for economic growth. I was chief for 13 years. I negotiated a modern land claim agreement with self-government, and while the effective day was almost 8 years ago, we opened a mall called Tsawwassen Mills in October on our lands, where within the first 6 days, 300,000 people came through it. So we went from managing poverty to now worried about managing wealth. And when I look at the lineup today of the expertise in this room that have agreed to come and be generous and share their time, it's impressive nationally, the amount of talent and expertise we have on this topic now. In fact, we now have many examples to look for in relation to economic development, and I'm very grateful that so many people came to spend their time and share their expertise today. So without further ado, I'll call Andrew up.
Thanks, Don. And yeah, Don and I are not related. I was wondering about that. Both having the same last name. Her husband, Reggie. When I first found out that was her husband, I was like, oh, good. I wanted to talk about Reggie because when I was a kid, you know, Reggie Leach is a hockey player, right? Former Flyer. I told her I'd be on the first line when they heard my last name because they thought I might have been related to Reggie Leach. But after they see me play a few shifts, they threw me back down to the fourth line. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Good to see you all here. You're right, Kim. What a great crowd. What an excellent bunch. I feel honored to be here amongst all you and really looking forward to a good to the day today. And as mentioned, my name is Andrew Leach. I come from BC, and I'm the chair of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporation Association. These are one of the 4 partners here who've put this thing on. Besides the policy forum, there's also INAC and us and the NAEDB. And I think when we talk about the theme of inclusiveness and reconciliation, one of the thoughts is bringing like-minded groups together and talk. And I think if we were just to close up this room and stay here for a few days and hash all these things out, I think we could come up with some pretty smart ideas about what we need to do and get the thing done. I think there's enough knowledge and expertise here that knows what needs to do. We just need to talk it out, figure out who's on what base, and get going. Really, I think that's what we need to do. So let's see what we can do in one day and start that dialogue. But from where I'm seeing it with NACCA, we are a development lending institute. We provide the financial support, the capital support, and the related support along that. And that's one sliver of this inclusive economic growth that we're trying to reach. And as you may have heard, one of the topics we've got is seizing the $27.7 billion opportunity. And what I understand that to mean is that if we were to take us as the Aboriginal group and bring us just to the standard that the rest of Canada has, we'd close this gap in our GDP by $27.7 billion in a year. That's a huge gap. And we know we have the ability. We've seen it in your area. You've seen the successes, those things. And what is it that makes it work? And I think if we brought those stories together, we could see there is a model there. And so what is that model? And I'm hoping to hear from everybody today about that and start moving this forward. I think the goal is that we can start guiding some of the policymakers on some of the changes that we need to make, some of the things that we need to do to start closing that gap. And I believe that that's what we'll achieve today. So thank you very much, and I look forward to further discussions.
So thank you, Don and Andrew, and thanks to the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board and the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association and Indigenous and Northern Affairs for making today possible. As we focus on reconciliation and inclusive growth here in Canada, we're aware that Indigenous peoples throughout the world are on a path of resurgence and that various reconciliation initiatives are underway. There are lessons that we can learn from other places, so we're pleased to have Karen Mundine join us today. She is the Deputy CEO of Reconciliation Australia, and she is from Bunjalung. You have to correct my pronunciation. Nation of Northern New South Wales. And over the course of her career, she's been instrumental in some of Australia's watershed national events, including the Apology to the Stolen Generations, Centenary of Federation commemorations, Corroboree 2000 and 1997 Australian Reconciliation Convention. Karen will be joining Dr. Wilton Littlechild in an armchair conversation. Dr. Littlechild is a member of the Ermineskin Cree Nation and is a residential school survivor, a widely respected lawyer and leader who has worked nationally and internationally, including with the UN, to advance Indigenous rights and treaties. He's a former Member of Parliament, a former regional chief, a a member of the Order of Canada, and was recently Commissioner with the Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So please join me in welcoming Karen Mundine and Dr. Wilton Littlechild.
You just sit here, is that what we do? All right. Well, thank you very much. Nigangakyo katam skatnao. Seminam stagi goche mamopia ngetonix inanaskaman. I just bring you greetings in my language to acknowledge the importance of our discussion here today. I asked the organizers a question this morning to remind me again why I'm being punished this way. I spent 29 hours to get here. I was in Norway yesterday morning. So I got here at 2 this morning, so if I fall off here, it'll be from a little bit of jet lag. But thank you very much. This is a great honor to have a joint deliberation here because of our shared experience. As you know, I think there have been at least 64 truth commissions around the world. And a couple of them stand out to be unique in special ways. And one of them, of course, is Australia. And they have begun a process that we've kind of watched as well in terms of trying to learn from them. I know, for example, they commemorated a decade of reconciliation recently, looking back at how far they have traveled on this path of reconciliation. So thank you very much for joining us. And I think perhaps first of all, I'd ask you to share your experience with us in Australia, in particular with economic reconciliation. Sometimes I say economic development through reconciliation or reconciliation through economic development. Either way, what has been your experience so far in Australia with that?
Thank you, Dr. Littlechild. And can I first say, as part of my culture, I'd like to acknowledge the Algonquin people on whose traditional lands that we're meeting today. And I bring the greetings from my ancestors of the Bundjalung Nation of Northern New South Wales and Australia. I'd also like to just say what an honour it is for me to not only sit here and be part of your deliberations, but also to share the stage with someone who I have watched and learnt from and read many, many things about the great work that you're doing here in Canada in reconciliation. So I feel somewhat intimidated, but certainly very honoured. Reconciliation in Australia, we've been on a path for a formal process of reconciliation for the last 25 years. So in the early 90s, the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation was set up as a government process. It was a council of 25 prominent Australians, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And they were tasked for 10 years to look at this concept of reconciliation, what it would mean for Australians and what it particularly would mean for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. Of course, at the end of their 10 years, they'd barely scratched the surface of what this means and what this looks like. And so the organisation that I now work for, Reconciliation Australia, was set up outside of that process to continue the work and also to take it out of government and really think about how do we engage that broader Australian population. I see many parallels between Australia and Canada, both the societies and the nations that we come from, the experience of First Nations people within those societies, and I guess also how we are marginalised within those broader communities. So thinking about reconciliation, it's been a long road, and I think it's a road that we're still very much travelling.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been said, I think, by someone before that if you shoot in the dark, you'll hit it every time. Meaning, of course, that it's good to have an action plan going forward with reconciliation. And what has been your experience with having an action plan to go forward with?
Certainly been a very big part of the work that Reconciliation Australia has done in the last 10 years. When we would go around and talk to organisations, particularly corporate Australia, there were a lot of people who saying, we believe in this idea of reconciliation, but we really don't know what to do. We don't know how to engage in this. We don't know what this looks like for us. So that's where our concept of reconciliation action plans were born, and I know that there are plans here in Canada as well. We took a really simple framework, looking at relationships, respect and opportunity, and turn that into a business plan that corporations, but all organisations, whether it's government, whether it's schools, whether it's education centres, a really simple framework that can be implemented within a business organisation. And the idea that it would link to existing strategies, I think, was really important around sustainability of those plans. When we, as we've grown the program over the last 10 years, we're now up to about 800 organisations throughout Australia. Over 3 million Australians work or study at an organisation that has a reconciliation action plan. And it also, it's trying to push those organisations beyond just thinking about procurement, thinking about employment, but it's also how do we engage with that population. When we talk about reconciliation in Australia, we talk about how do we engage with Australians where people work, where people are educated through schools and universities, and where do people socialise. It was really important for us to take reconciliation, which is inherently about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but how do we make it real and tangible for the non-Indigenous Australians? We're less than 3% of the population. If we want to see real change, if we want to see public policy change, we need to convince the rest of Australia to get behind the issues and the proposals that we're putting forward.
One of the, if I remember right, one of the things you did, which I thought was really important, was to get within the rooms of decision making. And I think you had an objective to place a certain number of people, Indigenous peoples, in the boardrooms of corporations. How has that worked?
I don't think we're as far advanced as you guys here are in Canada. And I have to say, the title of this session, Lessons from Australia, I feel very fraudulent. I feel that what little I know of the experience here in Canada and what little I know of what I've learned over the last couple of days, you guys seem so much further advanced than we are. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but I think particularly at this moment, there is certainly political support and desire for change, which I think in Australia, people probably have seen the changing merry-go-round of our political leadership and prime ministers. That's made it very difficult to make social progress. So in that sense, I don't think that we've quite cracked getting our people into those boardrooms, but certainly what we've found through our reconciliation action plans is that we deal with senior leadership. We don't deal with an HR manager or a procurement manager. We work with the CEOs and the senior executive leadership. And we've found that that success and that sustainability comes when we have the top tiers of an organisation or a corporation who are invested and engaged, and then work to filter that down through the organisation.
Thank you. In terms of, you mentioned that just a bit ago with the educational area as well, the focus on education, and specific to also economic reconciliation. Is there other areas that you've ventured into to promote economic reconciliation?
So I think if I can take a step back, as we approached our 25th anniversary last year, one of the things that we were finding was this definition of reconciliation. It was a difficult one, and particularly for non-Indigenous Australians to understand. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And how do we know if we're making progress and have we achieved it? We've had a series of research projects over the years to start to try and measure that. So reporting and accountability through our reconciliation action plans. We also do measurement around attitudes and perceptions, both within Indigenous communities, but also the non-Indigenous communities. And what we found is we needed to really bring that together. We needed to look at other countries, including Canada, in terms of how reconciliation is defined, but also how is it working in practice? What does it look like for other countries? And out of that, we came up with our State of Reconciliation report, which we launched last year. And within that, not only did we measure how we were tracking, but we came up with 5 dimensions of reconciliation, which we took to be absolutely essential if we are to achieve reconciliation. And those dimensions are race relations, institutional integrity, equality and equity, unity, and historical acceptance. And I think that they're the kind of things that I'm sure would resonate with a lot of people here in this room, and certainly it resonated with us within Australia and when we also spoke to some of our Maori counterparts across the ditch. So that's been a real focus for us. Within that, equality and equity is absolutely a core function. And I think it's important when we talk about those 5 dimensions of reconciliation is they don't work in isolation. Everything is inherently linked and connected, and we're only ever going to be as far advanced as the least advanced of those dimensions. So within the equality and equity piece, obviously having parity around civil issues, so having health, education, employment is absolutely key. But beyond that, the equity piece is also about what does it mean to be Aboriginal in a modern Australian society, and how do we assert our rights as Aboriginal people, those unique rights within that society. And that's very much linked to the UN's Declaration on the Rights of Aboriginal People, and thinking about how do we make that real for our communities. Much like here in Canada, we were one of the few countries that dissented against that. Belatedly, we have agreed to it, but we've yet to see real progress in terms of how is that implemented across our policy structures? What does it look like? So without having that political support, I guess, we've tried to circumvent that and go direct to institutions and organisations through our RAP plans and think about what are the kind of actions that bring these things to life. Rights are only as good, I think, as being able to assert them and to live them.
You mentioned one of the 5 elements of your plan or going forward, unity. Someone once said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. It's the same with unity. It's the same with unity in a way. We all talk about it, how we should be doing this together. And actually, I think personally that one of the lessons we learned in terms of reconciliation in Canada is that it's going to be very, very important that we work together, that we journey this path together. And unity is one of the desires. On reflection, how has that come about in Australia?
It's a tricky one, I have to say, and probably this week is the worst week to ask me that question. As you mentioned, we've had 9 years since the federal government made its apology to our stolen generation. And also on that anniversary, the Prime Minister of the day has taken a tradition of reporting against the government's own progress in closing the gaps for Aboriginal people. And I have to say, so that was on Monday, and I have to say, out of the 7 targets that the government has set itself, they're behind on 6 and are only likely to meet 1. And these are targets that will run out till 2021 and beyond. And I have to say, it saddens me. It makes this idea of unity that much further away. And I think it really points out the challenges that are before us within Australia.
So what concerns you the most?
There are so many. As I said, it's been 10 years since, well, nearly 10 years since the Bringing Them Home report, the inquiry into Aboriginal, the stolen generations. At that time, I think it was 1 in 5 Aboriginal children were in out-of-home care. Today, 9 data, that's 1 in 3. So we're actually going backwards. When we look at our rates of incarcerations, and I'm sure I'm not saying anything that would be unusual, unfamiliar to you, our rates of incarceration are through the roof again. And also youth suicide is ridiculously high amongst our communities. And that saddens me because that's our next generation. This is the people that will lead me forward and take my culture forward. If I dwelled on those things, I don't think I'd be able to get up in the morning. So I do look at where have we made some strides. And the fact that we do have 800 organisations around the country who put their hand up, non-Indigenous Australians, who said we want to be part of making this solution. And in fact, they stand with us to support us in putting pressure on the government, on the policymakers of the day, to look for smarter ways of doing this and bring together our collective ideas of how can we tackle some of these challenges.
I think you've touched on an area that's very, very difficult for us as well. I know, for example, when we started our Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings here in Canada, the child apprehension rate in my own province in Alberta was 68% of those apprehended are First Nations children. When we finished our work, it had gone to 70%. So that's a very serious signal to us, I think, that we have a long ways to go. But at the same time, I remember going to a classroom of young people, a grade 8 class, and I said, "How's it going?" And they said, "Well, not very good." I said, "What do you mean not very good?" "Well, we're just waiting, abiding time, so waiting for just waiting to die," they said. And you could see in the eyes of young people a loss of hope. And yet I go to the prisons where also the impacted, many of our relatives in prison, and I ask them, and it's interesting, from a child's eyes of despair and loss of hope, they tell us loss of hope. The man in prison says, I'm hoping to get out of here someday, and when I get out of here, I'm going to do this and this. So you see hope in the eyes of that person. On your reflection in Australia, what gives you the most hope, notwithstanding what you just described, because in many instances that's the same picture here. What gives you the most hope?
The one target that the government is on track to meet is our graduation rates at high school and university. And certainly I personally have seen the number of young, smart Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people graduating university who are looking for professional careers, who are working with corporate Australia to infiltrate. They give me a lot of hope. And they're doing it by, we refer to it as walking in two worlds. They do it with the strength and pride of their culture that sits behind them, to be able to also compete on a level playing field in a corporate and urban and mainstream Australia. So that certainly gives me hope. And through that, I guess also there is this growing entrepreneurship within Australia. I think it's always been there in Aboriginal Australia. We wouldn't have survived the 200 plus years of colonisation if it wasn't there. But it's really starting to take hold. It's really starting to grow. And to the government's credit, they do have policies and programs in place, particularly around procurement and thinking about their own procurement and how they can actually help those organisations, those businesses, those entrepreneurs really grow and be competitive in a world market.
So if you were to close your eyes for a moment, and I'm now the Prime Minister of Canada, Karen, and I want to do something about economic reconciliation. How do we have a more inclusive economic environment here in Canada? And I'm coming to you for advice, Karen, as the Prime Minister. We've heard our leaders say many times that the most important relationship to Canada and to himself as Prime Minister is the relationship with Indigenous peoples. And he goes on to give us 4 pillars of that. First one being the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. And recently, actually, I heard him at an environmental summit, when Vice President Biden was here. He added the word trust into those 4 pillars. I think that's really an important consideration. So before I go off to, I think it's Brussels I'm going today, and I had a good meeting with President Trump recently about our economic futures together. But now I want to ask you in Canada here, what can I do? What advice would you give me as the Prime Minister to work on this inclusive economic pursuit, I would say?
After asking if we could get a selfie so that I could post that on social media, I think trust is a very interesting thing. I would say trust the people in this room. I think the answers are here. You know your communities, you know your business, you know what works. And I would say trust the people in this room. Listen to what they have and listen with an open heart. This is something I think doesn't happen as much in Australia, and I think we're very envious of the position and situation that you guys find yourself in at the moment. There's a real opportunity, there's a real momentum that is building. The challenge is, how do you take advantage of that momentum? How do you take advantage of the political will and desire that exists? Because at the moment we don't feel that we've got that. So Prime Minister Trudeau, I would say, trust the people in this room, listen to what they have to say, because there are so many great ideas, and I know particularly from my own country, we know what works in our communities, we know what's important to us, and we know that there are challenges, but we also have ideas of how we can progress things. So trust your own people.
Now, we have in this room, as I just pan the room, some of our best business minds in Canada as First Nations leaders, successful business leaders. What advice would you give us as business leaders going forward with reconciliation?
Trust yourselves, back yourselves, and know that you have a friend down under.
Down where? You know, you've also, it's been said that you have a global eye view of things, and this one is the worm's eye view of things. So thank you very much for sharing some thoughts with us. And I think, is there an opportunity to open the floor for some dialogue? Thank you very much. So thank you, Karen. I appreciate the opportunity. So the floor is yours. Anyone who wants to make a comment or ask questions?
Karen.
Yes.
JP Gladius with JP. And we were having breakfast this morning. We were talking about your RAP, the Reconciliation Action Plan for those 800 companies across Australia that are committed to reconciliation and building bridges and trust. How do you hold them accountable? In Canada, we have companies that are trying to do the right thing. Some are doing great work with our communities and businesses. Sometimes it's just words. So how do you hold them to account?
It's a tricky one. As we've grown the Reconciliation Action Program, what became very apparent to us is that a lot of these organisations, a lot of these companies are on very different journeys, and their starting places are very different. So a one-size-fits-all framework didn't quite work. So a couple of years ago, we actually developed 4 different kinds of RAPs, essentially the same, but it was very much taking into account where those organisations sat. So we call it the RISE program. It's about reflect, innovate, stretch, and elevate. So at the reflect stage, not surprisingly, this is people very early on in their journey, people who need to really understand their relationships and understand what it is that they're hoping to achieve out of this as well. And as you move through the program, I guess the actions and the expectations of what we have for each of those organisations increases and rises. Those at the stretch and elevate, these are our top tiers. So these are the companies that really are doing their homework, They've been doing this for quite some time. They've made mistakes, they've learnt lessons, and they're really pushing themselves with either stretch targets or how do I become a leader in this space. Through this process, all of our RAP organisations must report to us annually. We also, through what we call our Australian Reconciliation Barometer, which is a survey of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and non-Indigenous Australians around attitudes. We do a mini version of that for our Stretch and Elevate partners, which is taking some of the questions that are in that broader survey and asking it within their organisation. So we have a comparison point of, are these programs actually making a difference, and how does that compare to the general community who are only exposed to more general messages? And I'm pleased to say that on the whole, things like attitudes towards Aboriginal people and cultures are much better, trust is a lot higher, prejudice is much lower, and just the simple fact of being able to engage and having contact with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is really important to that relationship, and that's much higher as well. As well as at the Elevate stage, we actually ask for those organisations, not ask, require those organisations to be externally audited by an independent body. I was interested in our conversation this morning over breakfast because I think we're still refining this. I think it's constantly a challenge for us to ensure the validity of what companies are saying and to ensure the integrity of what they're saying and doing. Quite often these can just be words on paper, they can be numbers and a ticker box. But as we work closely with other organisations and particularly with government and using our reconciliation action plans as a measure of how much work these organisations or how good these organisations are around reconciliation, we need to be a lot more thorough. So I'm really interested in hearing your ideas around how we get other third parties in to validate and check the claims of these organisations.
Thank you.
Karen Marie Delorme, thank you so much for being with us. It is rare in Canada to not engage in a discussion around reconciliation and hear about the importance of decolonization, indigenizing our institutions. Is that same discussion happening in Australia? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about what that means and how one goes about doing that?
Very much so. I guess that comes back to, as I mentioned, those 5 dimensions, and institutional integrity is really important. And by that, what we mean is, how do our institutions that govern our civil society, how are they engaging with Aboriginal people? What does the interface look like? So what is that interface with police, with the judicial system, with hospitals? We have far too many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are turned away with serious health issues because they're deemed to be drunk or under the influence of drugs and other alcohol and other drugs. So how do we get cultural engagement within those organisations? How do our public institutions reassess how they look at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? I think one of the things that we've learnt, and I guess this guides that framework of relationships, respect and opportunities, is yes, these are institutions, yes, these are organisations, but they're all made up of people and individuals who will make a decision based on their experience, based on their attitudes, and sometimes based on the assumptions and stereotypes that they bring to bear. So how do we work with those organisations to have people more culturally competent when they're dealing with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, whether that's as a bank, as a customer, whether that's as an emergency room nurse or doctor? How are they engaging? How do they understand the context of Aboriginal people? And how has that brought us to where we are today? So that's very much a big part of what we do through our reconciliation action plans. It can't just be about the numbers. It can't just be about jobs and those kind of figures. They're important, but unless we make changes to our own attitudes and our own perceptions, we're never going to see those figures changing. We're not really going to see the kind of progress that we're hoping for.
It's interesting you mentioned health as being very important. I was speaking at a health conference recently. I was trying to speak really fast because of the time was short, and I said, you know, our people, we have really 2 serious challenges, and it's diabetes. I said, what? What did I just say? created a new word. Trying to say diabetes and obesity at the same time. Did we have one over here? Yes, please.
Morning, everyone. My name is Leonard Ojic. I'm an Algonquin from Kitigan-Zibi. I'd just like to officially, welcome you to our traditional territory. Very honored to have the guests that we have. I'm here to learn, and I'm very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Karen Rasul. I'm a PPF fellow. I'm also from Doki's First Nation, Anishinaabe community, just about 5 hours north of here. Thank you for being with us here today. I'm interested in knowing what the level of engagement is with your young people. It's a tricky one. I am encouraged that particularly in our major cities and urban centres, there seems to be a renewal and revival that's happening. I think as the world around us is changing so much, particularly young people in the cities who are perhaps more disconnected or removed from their traditional lands or culture, there's a real push to seek that out, to revive language, to learn culture in a way that certainly didn't feel like it when I was a young person. I would say anecdotally from the engagements that I've had with young people who live on country, who have that engagement, their feeling of isolation, and we're as big and wide as Canada is, their feelings of isolation, I think, is something that they feel acutely. And I think that's a tension for young people who are on country, who have access to culture, who have some sense of language, feel isolated from a broader and modern Australia, whereas those in urban centres are really seeking out that kind of engagement. I don't have the answers. I know, particularly as I mentioned before, youth suicide is a major problem for us, particularly in those communities. I think a lot of that has very much to do with that economic isolation as much as a physical isolation. It's certainly a challenge for our policymakers, and it's a real challenge for our organisations that are dealing with those issues within those communities. Sorry, I don't really have an answer.
So, unfortunately, we don't have any more time. I don't see anyone else wanting to take the floor violently. Oh, we have one last one. One last one.
Sorry, just quickly. Shannon Matadawabin, National Aboriginal Capital Corporation, is a CEO. Just looking at the similarities in the two countries is unbelievable. Like we're mirrors of each other. Just want to get some feedback from you on what sort of supports are in place for that the government is providing the Indigenous people when we look at sustainability and long-term development. Supporting your economic development vehicles is probably the most important area. So I just wanted to get an understanding of what they're doing for you down under.
Certainly, and I should probably preface this by saying this is my personal opinion in this, but certainly the government's rhetoric around this economic development is very much there. And they're a conservative government, so this stuff resonates with them. I think where we perhaps are at odds is the way to go forward with that, and how this government truly understands and recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander aspiration within that. We do things different. We do business different. That doesn't always fit into a Western concept of what a business is or where those governance structures sit. That being said, this current government is making inroads in this area. There are other organisations that I suspect mirror your organisations, and they are being supported by government programs. As I said, there's a focus around procurement. There is a focus around Indigenous entrepreneurship and business support. So it's there, but I would say it's probably more in its infancy to where you guys are at the moment.
Thank you. So that brings us to an end, and by way of conclusion, let me thank you again for this tremendous opportunity. If I were to if I were asked what I would wish on you, is that we made a call to action directed to private industry specifically in terms of implementing, for example, the UN Declaration. And in that, I would zero in on Article 32 of the Declaration in terms of going forward to have this more inclusive economic direction. And another new word I'll leave you with, it's about reconciliation. So it's time for us to do that corporately, government-wise, us as Indigenous peoples, and I wish you the best of the day, and thank you very much for this honor. Thank you.
That was like a little teaser, I think. Could have listened to them for hours. Thank you so much. Our elder has arrived, so I'd like to, before I call upon her, I'd like to just say that it was really interesting discussion to start thinking about in Canada about the definition of the full expression of reconciliation, including economic inclusion, and the points of interaction for reconciliation at the institutional level, at the government level, and at the grassroots level. Lots of food for thought comparing Australia to Canada, and I think, for Karen to think that Canada's further ahead, I think the real trick is to sort of define what we want to measure and going forward what are important aspects of reconciliation. I just want to say one other quote about unity. A chief from the West Coast used to say, if you want to start a fight with chiefs, just raise the word unity. Anyways, without further ado, I would like to ask our elder, Claudette Commanda, Algonquin, Anishinaabe, mother, grandmother, educator, and knowledge keeper, to bless us. Claudette? Oh, thank you. Otherwise, next thing you know, the fire marshal will be on his way. And what happened to my grandfather had one ceremony. He lit the pipe, and anyhow, the sprinklers went off. And my grandfather said, "You do not disturb spirits." So no one moved. But good morning. Hello, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Kwei Sheba. Kwei Sheba, hi Karen. Kwei Sheba is how we say good morning in Algonquin. Kitigan Zibi people also say Minogishikun. So good morning. I'm sorry that I'm late. I apologize. However, I have no control over the weather, despite leaving my home at 6 o'clock this morning. And I certainly have no control over motorists who do not have winter tires. The highway wasn't so bad, but as soon as you arrive in a city, oh my God, I swear to, one flake falls and everyone's panicking. Then you have a snowplow in the front of you who is not even plowing the road, but takes up the whole entire street. So you veer off. You find another alternative route. You're stuck behind a bus who's jackknifed, so you find another route. You're stuck behind motorists with summer tires that are in the ditch. Anyhow, needless to say, I was becoming quite upset, but I said, no, I have to maintain my positive, loving attitude because I have to go in there and be this very feather-fluffing, loving elder.
civilized old lady, that I am. And I do take acknowledgement of the responsibility that when you're carrying responsibilities of prayer and medicine, to be respectful of time. So I did phone Mano, and I explained to her I will not make it for 8:30. Please go ahead and start the agenda. And when I do arrive, and I hope I arrive safe and sound, I certainly will give the blessing, the welcoming as Algonquin people, and the blessing. And I really appreciate all of your understanding and your respect for that. So I thank you very much for why I was late, or your understanding for it. I appreciate my relative, community member, Leonard, for rising earlier and giving the acknowledgement of the territory. So I say to each and every one of you, Kwe Nichkiwe Dug, Kwe Anishinaabe, Pijaji Goma Anishinaabe Yaki, O Mama Wenenewag, Pijaji Goma. To each and every one of you, my relatives, friends, on behalf of the Algonquin people, the Algonquin nation, those 11 communities that comprise of who we are as a nation, the 9 that are in what's called the province of Quebec, and the 2 that are located what's called the province of Ontario, Pikwakanon and Wagushish. We welcome you. We welcome you with arms open wide to the unsurrendered, unceded, ancestral territory of the Algonquin people. The land that the Creator has given us since time immemorial. And we must ensure that this land will be here forevermore for our children. Because we all know how important that land is. It is who we are. Nindaki, Nindanan. I am the land. The land is we. We are the land. The Creator has given us that sacred gift, putting us on this place, all of us as First Nations people, or the original people, the first peoples of what we call Turtle Island. So each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters from the various nations and tribes, and the other races of people who are here, to those of the Inuit and the Métis people, welcome, 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 welcome to unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe. O Mama Weniniwag. I am Anishinaabe Kwe of the Mama Weniniwag. We are the hunters and the gatherers. We humble ourselves before the one and only, the one God, the Creator, who has made all of us. And I ask that we humble ourselves before that Creator. Humble ourselves before all our relatives, our ancestors. Ni Jenwen Daganag. And I ask that you offer your prayers of thanksgiving, your prayers of request, to offer those words in the way that you are comfortable in giving your prayer and asking for love, peace, understanding, and for whatever it is, for your families and your nations and your homelands. Gishiminado. Chimigwajonje nongum. Das pinigen ni jenwan daganag. Das pinigen kokomisag. Das pinigen mishomsag. Kichimigwajonje gishiminado. Onje nongum. Hanabagus, we dokwishnin. Onje kakina nongum. Ashishwabag. Gishiminado. Kichimigwajonje jojo aki kokomistapagizis mishomisgizis. Migwe jonje awesi sag nabishan mishkiki ashish awesi sag. Migwe jonje kinu. Wapshki mayengan ashish manido makwa. Migwe jonje gishimanado. Kizagi ewen. Nibuk sendam minopamadwen onje kakina. Nibuk senda onje kizagi ewen kakina. O Creator, we give you great thanks for the beauty of this day. We welcome in our relatives, our ancestors, the grandmothers and the grandfathers of the 4 directions. We give honor and thanks for our mother, the earth, our grandfather, the sun, and our grandmother, the moon. We thank all our relatives, from the water life to the plant life, the animal life, the winged, and all that is non-human, and all of our spirit helpers. Creator, Nibuksendam, Chiminotogum. Creator, we ask that you bless each and every one with good words to say this day, and that you bless the people here with many more tomorrows, and that we come together, Mashkawiziwin, with your strength and with your knowledge and wisdom to guide this work that is so needed for our communities and our nations and this country. And Creator, it is with our heart and our mind and our spirit that we remember the children in our communities, the children who need life. Let us honor them, let us remember them, and let us pray that they will continue to live, that we will bring hope to those children, for our community so desperately need this. The children are our nations, they are tomorrow, our survival. And Creator, we ask to accept this prayer. Gijimanado, Anabigis, Udokoshnin, Anabigis, Onji, Imiyawin. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day. And remember, hope is free, and so is love. And peace and love is what really will make reconciliation for all of this country. So take good care. Enjoy your coffee. Enjoy your day. And despite the fact that the snow is falling and it's going to keep falling, it's still a beautiful day because the sun shines in all of our hearts. Thank you. Kizagian. I love you very much. Take care.
So good work all. We've made it to our first break. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. And I will be starting on time to keep us on track. We have a lot on our agenda ahead of us, so really encourage you to get back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Order in the court and you listen.